my study with Starker was the most inspirational thing I can possibly imagine. He was a mercurial person, and at first hard to understand across the room. And I can remember great highs and great lows, but as I've said before, it's the foundation for my teaching and my approach to teaching. He was very glib. He was very economical in his explanations. He was maddening. I would be struggling through a passage, and Koldani said, he would say, "I don't understand why you're having so much trouble here." And he would play it in my face, and I would die. But I did pay attention, and so I learned an enormous amount. I can remember long conversations on trips to see the leaves in Brown County outside Bloomington, Indiana, where we'd just go out and look at leaves and talk and wander around. But in the studio, he was never unkind, but he was totally demanding. He didn't want to hear anything more than a couple or three times, and then he was finished with it. There comes the cat. And then he was finished with it. It needed to be memorized. It needed to be worked out, worked through. I can remember that when I went to Indiana University, I had not studied the Saint-Saëns Concerto. And he said, "You have 2 weeks to memorize it." So I had to. So he pushed hard. But as I say, he was extremely kind. What did I learn from him? I learned so much. The basic thing I learned, and this is a paraphrase, Starker didn't say this, but it's appropriate. As a performer, you're a window on the world for the composer. It's not about you. It's about the composer. And so mannerisms and self-indulgence on stage and things of that sort were something he would not brook. And to some extent I misunderstood that, and my development was a little bit hampered because of that, because I couldn't let go of myself, which you have to do if you're going to perform. Anyway, what I learned from him and from watching him and from being around him was how to manage kinetic energy, how to manage force, what to do about structure, how to understand structure, both as far as my own playing was concerned and as far as other people's playing was concerned. I was actually his assistant for a period of time at Bloomington, and I taught students, and I also taught pedagogy. And his teaching was very intense, and so much happened in an hour that it's one of those situations where I was glad when he left town on tour so I could catch up with what I'd learned. He said things like, never hurry. Things are done by preparing in advance. Kinetic energy is managed by making circles. Structure is determined by the nature of the individual hand and arm and so forth, but it works according to principles. And those principles I'll certainly get into later in some detail when we get into a pedagogic wing of things, but very simple things like being economical with movement of the left hand, lifting the fingers so that they retract when they come off the string rather than flying in the air. Being sure that the fingers of the right hand are lined up so that they can flex and so forth. He was very funny. He never taught collé or any overt motion of the fingers. He actually put it down, and I found that later that it's useful, and I do teach it. And I can remember later in a master class at Bloomington that I taught, Starker said, "Oh, you're teaching collé. I guess it's okay." And because I found one of his students was frozen in the right hand, and we started working on collé. So this efficiency and yet suppleness of movement, and thinking of the string supporting the bow, and thinking of the string supporting the hand rather than pressing in, trying to release tone from the cello rather than forcing sound from the cello. And this is an interesting school of thought because it does result in a totally different kind of sound. It's a sound which is concentrated but relaxed. It does not have the drilling sound that a lot of cellists love. So it's a different thing. Preparation of shifts, relaxation of the upper arm, the shoulder, the deltoid muscle. All these things Starker talked about, and here I was working on the Kodai Sonata, and that thing, it moves so quickly. He said, but take your time. All these things apply, and you can learn from it. And I did. Interestingly enough, he did not assign a lot of etudes. He, by that time, I think, had made a recording called The Road to Cello Playing, if not then, shortly thereafter, which is about 25 etudes and things of that sort, which are stunning and really very beautiful. But he had a basis of a number of etudes, which we worked on really very hard, which talked about various specific issues with the instrument, work in thumb position, strict velocity, octaves, things of that sort. Again, which we'll get into just a little bit later. Fascinating, Starker did not believe in playing scales. Never did. And all the scales that I played were sneaked in. And I think that for most people, scale playing, arpeggios, thirds are terribly, terribly important to work with key area and also to gather specific technical tools to apply to the repertoire. The next thing that he taught me was that everything begins with Bach. And you know, I still believe that. And I believe and do every day play the same movements of Bach now just to maintain, but I play things that are specifically disjunct, such as the Courant of the third suite, Corrente of the second suite, Prelude of the fourth suite, Jig of the sixth suite, and I also play things that are conjunct, the Jig of the fourth suite, and I play things that are a little more mixed up, as it were. The Allemande of the sixth suite, for flexibility of the left hand and beauty of tone and so forth. So every day I play some of these, I play most of these things now just to maintain. And in this time of pandemic and so forth, the outside performances and so are extremely rare. And the last time I played was Schubert C Major Quintet in February, I think, with my daughter's quartet in New Jersey. And that's the last thing I really prepared for. I am also working on the B-flat Mendelssohn Sonata. Anyway, with Starker, I played a program for my master's recital and performer certificate of Bach 5, Schumann Concerto, and Kodai. I can remember Starker saying after the first round, "I voted against you." And I thought, fine, but I got through the first round anyway. And the second round I was successful, and he did say, "I voted for you." And that was pretty much the end of my stay at Indiana, but Starker and I kept in very close touch for many, many years after that. I visited Bloomington a lot, and he remains alive to me right now, because I can remember him sitting across the room with a cigarette between these fingers, playing, and giving wonderful, wonderful musical advice.